"You're going too deep," Tallulah Birdsong gasped, her massive frame trembling against the rough-hewn bedpost as her new husband's calloused hands found her face in the lamplight. The terrified giant bride, 6 feet 1 inch of Cheyenne strength that had survived reservation poverty and white men's cruelty, had built walls around her heart so thick that 3 weeks of marriage hadn't cracked them. But tonight, Wyatt Calloway, the widowed Wyoming rancher who'd chosen her specifically for her size and strength, wasn't reaching for her body. His fingers traced the tears sliding down her bronze cheeks as he whispered words that made her breath catch. "I need to reach the part of you that's never been touched. The part where a lifetime of being called too big, too much, too Indian had taught her that her body was valuable, but her heart was worthless." The cowboy's eyes held something she'd never seen before. Not hunger for her strength, but hunger for her soul. "Wyatt, stop," she breathed, but he pressed his forehead to hers. "That's where the real you lives, Tallulah, the woman who deserves to be loved." Her walls shattered, and what happened next in that storm-battered cabin would either destroy her completely or teach her that being vulnerable wasn't weakness, it was the deepest courage. But could a woman who'd spent 28 years protecting herself survive letting someone in? And what did Wyatt mean when he said his first wife's delicate perfection had killed her? And that's exactly why he needed Tallulah's terrifying strength. What part of her had truly never been touched? And why was this cowboy willing to risk everything to reach it? 3 hours earlier, Tallulah had been in the kitchen scrubbing cast iron with the same furious energy she'd used to scrub away her entire first 28 years of existence. The pot was already clean. She kept scrubbing anyway. Outside, the April wind howled across the Wyoming grasslands like a living thing trying to claw its way inside. Spring storms in this territory came fast and mean, and this one had all the signs of lasting through the night. She should have been grateful for the sturdy cabin walls, for the food in the larder, for the wedding ring on her finger that meant she'd never have to go back to the reservation where government rations came with shame, and her mother's people looked at her like a half-breed mistake. But gratitude felt like a luxury she couldn't afford, not when her husband treated her like she might shatter. Wyatt Calloway was everything the men back home weren't. Patient, soft-spoken, careful with his words and his hands. He'd given her the bedroom while he slept in the barn for 3 weeks straight. 3 weeks, like she was made of porcelain instead of the hard Cheyenne prairie that had shaped her. Like her size and strength meant she needed protecting instead of using. Every morning he thanked her for breakfast. Every evening he complimented her work. And every night he disappeared to that goddamn barn, leaving her alone with the sound of her own breathing and the crushing weight of waiting for the other boot to drop. Because it always dropped. Men always wanted something. Her father had wanted her mother's body and left the moment Tallulah was born, too big, too dark, too obviously Indian. The reservation men had wanted free labor and called it courtship. The white traders who came through had wanted her like they wanted a good mule. Strong back, strong legs, don't ask questions. So when Wyatt's advertisement appeared in the Laramie paper, rancher seeks hardy wife for remote homestead, strength of character more important than delicate sensibilities. Tallulah had seen it for what it was. A transaction. Honest, at least. She could do honest. She'd written back with the truth. "I'm 6 feet tall, half Cheyenne, and I can outwork any man you know. I don't break easy and I don't complain. If that's what you need, I'm what you're looking for." His response came 3 weeks later. "Miss Birdsong, I don't need a workhorse. I need a partner who won't give up when this land tries to kill us both. Can you do that?" She'd stared at those words for an hour before writing back. "I've survived worse than land." The scrubbing brush slipped from her hands and clattered into the sink. Tallulah's fingers ached, her shoulders burned. Good. Pain was honest. Pain didn't lie or make promises it couldn't keep. She dried her hands on her apron and turned to find Wyatt standing in the doorway, hat in his hands, rain dripping from his canvas coat. His sandy hair was plastered to his forehead, and his boots left muddy prints on her clean floor. But his eyes, those damn patient eyes, just watched her like she was a puzzle he actually wanted to solve instead of a problem he needed to fix. "Storm's getting worse," he said quietly. "Secured the horses and the barn. We're locked in for the night." Locked in. The words hit different than he meant them. Tallulah's throat went tight. "I'll make supper," she said, turning back to the stove. Anything to avoid those eyes. "Already ate with the horses." He stepped inside, shaking rain from his coat. "Tallulah, we need to talk." Her hands froze on the pot handle. There it was. 3 weeks of waiting, and the boot was finally dropping. "If this isn't working for you, just say it," she said, her voice flat and hard. "I can pack and be gone by morning if the weather breaks. You don't owe me anything." The silence behind her stretched so long, she thought maybe he'd left. Then his voice came rough and low. "Is that really what you think? That I want you gone?" She couldn't turn around, couldn't let him see her face. "I think you got what you paid for and realized it wasn't what you wanted." "Tallulah, look at me." She shook her head. His boots crossed the floor. She heard every step, and then he was right behind her, close enough that she could feel the cold rolling off his damp clothes and smell the rain and hay and leather that clung to him. "Please," he said. Just that one word. But something in it cracked her open. She turned, had to look down to meet his eyes because even grown men barely reached her chin, and she'd learned to hate that. Hate being the woman who literally looked down on everyone. But Wyatt's face held no resentment, just something that looked almost like pain. "You think I don't want you," he said slowly, like he was working through a difficult problem. "You think these 3 weeks I've been... what? Deciding if you're good enough." The words hit too close. Tallulah's jaw tightened. "Aren't you?" His laugh was short and sharp. "Christ, Tallulah, I've been terrified." That stopped her cold. "Of what?" "Of you." He ran a hand through his wet hair. "Of rushing you. Of making you feel like this was just about bodies and obligations. My first wife was small, delicate. Everyone said we made a perfect couple." His voice went rough. "She died giving birth. The baby too. I held her while she bled out, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do because she was too small, too fragile, and I'd done that to her." Tallulah's breath caught. He'd never mentioned his first wife, never said why he was alone. "When I wrote that advertisement, I knew what I needed. Someone strong, someone who wouldn't break." He looked up at her and his eyes were raw. "But Tallulah, you did break. Just not the way you think. You've been walking around this cabin like you're waiting for me to hurt you, and I realized someone already did, probably lots of someones. And I don't know how to show you that I'm not them." The wind screamed outside and rattled the shutters like it wanted in on this conversation. Tallulah stood there in her kitchen. Her kitchen, she'd started thinking of it that way without permission, and felt something dangerous crack open in her chest. This man, this careful, patient man was afraid of her, not of her size or her strength or her Cheyenne blood, but of hurting her. The thought was so foreign, it almost didn't make sense. "You don't know anything about me," she said, but her voice came out wrong, shaky. "Then tell me." Wyatt didn't move closer, didn't crowd her, just stood there dripping rainwater on her clean floor and looking at her like her words mattered more than anything else in the world. "Tell me who hurt you. Tell me why you flinch every time I say something kind. Tell me why you work yourself half to death every day, like you're trying to earn the right to exist in your own home." And there it was, the question nobody had ever asked, because nobody had ever cared about the answer. Tallulah's hands curled into fists at her sides. "My father left the day I was born," she heard herself say. The words came out flat, factual, like she was reporting the weather. "Told my mother he didn't sign up for raising a half-breed giant. She tried. She really did. But on the reservation, I was too white, too big. The other kids called me White Bear, and their mothers looked at me like I was a mistake that wouldn't stop reminding them of what white men did to Indian women." Wyatt's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. Didn't tell her it was okay, or that people were cruel, or any of the useless things people said when they wanted you to stop making them uncomfortable. He just listened. So she kept talking. "When I was 16, a trader came through. Said I was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Said my size made me exotic, special." The memory tasted like bile. "He courted me for 3 months, brought me ribbons and sweets, made me feel like maybe I wasn't a mistake after all. Then one night he got drunk and told his friends I was his Indian giant, and wasn't it funny how even freaks needed love? I could hear them laughing through the tent walls." She looked at Wyatt and made sure her voice stayed steady. "I learned real quick after that. Men either wanted to use my strength or prove they could conquer it. The ones who said I was beautiful meant it the way you'd say a good horse is beautiful. Useful, strong, but never delicate, never precious, never the kind of woman who gets protected. I'm the kind who does the protecting." The words hung in the air like smoke. Outside, thunder rolled across the prairie, so loud it shook the floorboards. Wyatt's hands were still at his sides, but his knuckles had gone white. "And you think that's what I see," he said quietly. "A workhorse, something useful." Tallulah lifted her chin. "Isn't it? You needed someone who could survive out here, someone who wouldn't break under the work or the loneliness. You were honest about it. I appreciated that. It's better than the ones who pretend it's about love. What if I told you I was wrong?" His voice cut through the storm. "What if I told you I thought I needed your strength, but what I actually need is you, all of you, not just the parts that can lift feed bags and birth calves and survive blizzards, the parts you keep locked away because you think nobody wants them." Tallulah's heart hammered against her ribs. "You don't know what you're asking." "Don't I?" He took one step closer. Just one. "You hum when you think I'm not listening. Old Cheyenne songs your mother must have taught you. You stand on the porch every sunrise and watch the light hit the mountains like you're memorizing it. You talk to the horses in 2 languages, and they love you for it. You made curtains for the windows even though I never asked, and you picked yellow fabric because you said this place needed sunshine." His voice dropped. "You think I don't see you, Tallulah? I see you so clearly it terrifies me, because I don't deserve you, but I want to try anyway." The words slammed into her like a physical force. Nobody had ever seen those things. Nobody had ever thought they mattered. "Stop," she whispered, and she hated how her voice broke. "Why?" He was close enough now that she could see the water droplets caught in his eyelashes, the way his chest rose and fell with careful breathing. "Because you're going too deep. You're looking at parts of me I don't let anyone see." "I know." His hand came up slowly, telegraphing the movement, giving her every chance to pull away. His palm cupped her jaw, and his thumb traced the sharp line of her cheekbone. "But Tallulah, I need to reach the part of you that's never been touched, the part that believes you're worth loving. Not for what you can do or how you can serve, but just because you exist. That's the part I'm after." Tears burned hot behind her eyes, and she refused to let them fall. "What if that part doesn't exist? What if I'm just what you see, all strength and walls and nothing soft left inside?" "Then you're lying to yourself." His other hand found her waist, and the touch was so gentle it hurt. "Because I felt you trembling when I complimented your cooking. I saw your face when the mare had her foal last week, and you thought I wasn't watching. You looked at that baby like it was a miracle. You're not all walls, sweetheart. You're just scared. And I don't blame you. But I'm not leaving. Storm or sunshine, easy or hard, I'm staying right here. So you can let me in, or you can keep hiding. But either way, I'm not giving up on you. Something inside her shattered. Just completely broke apart like ice under spring sun. The tears came whether she wanted them or not, hot and fast and humiliating, and before she could stop herself, she was pressing her face into his shoulder. Had to bend down to do it, always had to make herself smaller. And his arms came around her like walls that actually protected instead of trapped. I don't know how, she choked out against his wet shirt. I don't know how to let someone in. Everyone who ever got close either left or hurt me or used me up. I don't know how to trust that you're different. His hand stroked her hair, careful and reverent. Then let me show you, one day at a time, one moment at a time. Let me prove that I'm not them. She pulled back enough to look at him, and his face was so open, so raw with want and tenderness and something that looked dangerously close to love that it stole her breath. Wyatt, I'm scared. Good, he said, and smiled through his own tears. Means it matters. Means you're not just going through the motions. You're actually feeling something. He was right. She was feeling everything. Terror and hope and desperate longing all tangled together in her chest until she couldn't tell which was which. The lamp flickered. Thunder shook the walls. Rain hammered the roof like bullets. And in the middle of all that chaos, Wyatt Calloway looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. I don't want the bedroom tonight, he said quietly. I don't want to sleep in the barn. I want to be with my wife, really with her, not because it's an obligation or a duty, but because she's the most magnificent woman I've ever known, and I'm tired of pretending I don't want her in every possible way. Heat flooded through her. Fear and desire in equal measure. And if I can't do this, if I panic or freeze or... Then we stop, he said simply. And we try again tomorrow, or next week, or whenever you're ready. There's no clock on this, Tallulah. We've got the rest of our lives. The rest of our lives. The words settled into her bones like a promise. Like maybe for the first time in 28 years, someone was offering her forever instead of just right now. She kissed him first. Didn't mean to, hadn't planned it, but suddenly her hands were fisted in his damp shirt and she was pulling him up to meet her, always up, always bending down to reach people. And his mouth was warm and tasted like rain and something sweet she couldn't name. Wyatt made a sound low in his throat, surprise and relief and hunger all mixed together, and his arms tightened around her waist like he was afraid she'd disappear. The kiss was nothing like she'd expected, not demanding or rough or taking. It was asking. A question formed with lips and breath and the gentle pressure of his hands on her back. Can I? Is this okay? Do you want this too? And God help her, she did. Wanted it so badly her whole body ached with it. She broke away, gasping, and he let her go immediately. His pupils were blown wide, and his breathing came hard, but he didn't chase, didn't grab, just stood there looking at her like she'd hung the moon, and he was grateful just to see it. Bedroom, she managed. Her voice sounded wrecked. Unless you want to consummate this marriage on the kitchen floor. His laugh was breathless. As much as my romantic soul appreciates the imagery, I'd prefer our first time didn't involve me getting splinters in unfortunate places. The tension broke. Tallulah felt herself smile, actually smile, and the expression felt strange on her face. Foreign. How long had it been since she'd smiled about something real? Wyatt took her hand. His palm was calloused from years of ranch work, but his grip was careful, reverent. He led her through the small cabin to the bedroom she'd occupied alone for 3 weeks. and when he closed the door behind them, the sound felt final, permanent, like crossing a threshold she couldn't uncross. The room was simple. A bed with a quilt she'd stitched herself, a dresser, a single window that looked out over the prairie. The lamp on the bedside table cast everything in warm gold light, and shadows danced across the log walls like living things. Tallulah stood in the middle of the room and felt her courage start to crack. This was different. This was real. This was her about to be vulnerable in ways she'd sworn she'd never be vulnerable again. Wyatt must have seen it on her face because he stopped, didn't approach, just watched her with those patient, devastating eyes. "Talk to me," he said softly. "Tell me what you're thinking." "I'm thinking I don't know how to do this." The admission came out raw. "I don't know how to be with someone without hiding, without protecting myself. Every time before, I wasn't really there. I was just letting it happen to my body while I went somewhere else in my head. And I don't want to do that with you, but I don't know if I know how to stay." His face did something complicated. Pain and tenderness and fierce protectiveness all at once. "Then we'll figure it out together. But Tallulah, I need you to understand something." He crossed to her slowly, gave her time to retreat. "I don't want your body if your heart's not in it. I don't want you performing or enduring or doing your duty. I want you present. I want you feeling everything. And if that means we spend tonight just talking or just holding each other, that's enough. You're enough. Just as you are." The words broke something loose in her chest, something that had been locked up so long she'd forgotten it was there. "What if I cry?" she whispered. "What if I panic? What if I'm broken in ways you can't fix?" "Then you cry," Wyatt said, and his hands framed her face like she was something precious. "And if you panic, we stop. And sweetheart, you're not broken. You're wounded. There's a difference. Broken things are garbage. Wounded things heal. And I've got all the time in the world to help you heal." She kissed him again. Harder this time. Desperate. Trying to pour everything she couldn't say into the press of her lips. "Thank you. And I'm scared. And please don't leave me. And I think I might be falling in love with you. And that terrifies me more than anything." He kissed her back with the same intensity. His hands sliding into her hair, loosening the braid she'd woven that morning. Her hair fell around them in a dark curtain, and he made an approving sound, running his fingers through it like it was silk instead of the coarse black waves she'd always hated. They moved toward the bed. Tallulah's hands shook as she worked the buttons of his shirt. He helped her, shrugging out of the damp fabric, and then his hands were on the laces of her dress. "Tell me if you want me to stop," he murmured against her mouth. "Any time. For any reason. You say stop, and I stop. You understand?" She nodded. Couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. The dress came off, then her shift, then everything else, until she was standing before him in nothing but lamplight and vulnerability, and every instinct she had screamed at her to cover herself. To hide. To make herself smaller. But Wyatt's eyes on her body weren't hungry in the way she'd learned to fear. They were reverent. Awed, like he was looking at something holy. "My God," he breathed. "Tallulah, you're beautiful." The word hit wrong. "I'm too big. Too much. My shoulders are broader than yours. My hands are perfect," he interrupted, catching one of those hands and pressing it to his bare chest. She could feel his heartbeat thundering under her palm. "Your shoulders are strong enough to carry the weight of the world. Your hands are big enough to hold everything I want to give you. And you're not too much. You're exactly right." Tears spilled over. She couldn't stop them. Wyatt pulled her down onto the bed, had to pull because she was taller, heavier, and that old shame tried to surface until she saw his face. Saw how much he wanted this, wanted her. They lay facing each other on top of the quilt, and his hands traced slow, exploring paths across her skin, her shoulder, her ribs, the curve of her hip, learning her, memorizing her. And everywhere he touched, he murmured things. Beautiful, strong, mine. That last word sent heat pooling low in her belly. Mine, like she belonged to someone in a good way, in a chosen way, not as property but as partner. Tallulah, Wyatt said, and his voice had gone rough and low. I'm going to touch you now, really touch you, and I need you to stay with me. If you start disappearing, if you go somewhere else in your head, you tell me. Promise. She swallowed hard, nodded. His hand slid lower, found the places that made her gasp, and true to his word, he paid attention, watched her face, adjusted his touch based on her reactions, asked questions without words. Is this good? Do you like this, more or less, or different? And she found herself answering with her body, with sounds she didn't know she could make. There you are, he murmured when her eyes went wide and her breath came in sharp gasps. Stay with me, sweetheart. I've got you. But when he moved over her, when his weight settled between her thighs, something in her seized up. Old memories crashed in, the trader's laugh, reservation men who took what they wanted and called it courting. The feeling of being pinned, trapped, used. Wait, she gasped, and her hands came up against his chest, not pushing but not welcoming. Panic clawed at her throat. You're going too deep. Wyatt froze, didn't move, didn't press. Just held himself above her and looked into her eyes with such complete focus, it was almost frightening. What do you mean? He asked gently. Tell me what's happening. Her chest heaved. You're reaching parts of me I don't let anyone touch. The parts that hope, that want, that believe maybe I deserve good things. And if you reach them, if I let you in that deep, and then you change your mind or leave or realize I'm not worth it, it'll destroy me. I can survive anything except hope that gets taken away. The truth hung between them raw and bleeding. Wyatt's arms trembled with the effort of holding himself still, of not moving when every line of his body screamed that he wanted to. But he didn't. He stayed frozen, waiting for her. I know, he said finally, and his voice cracked. I know I'm asking you to risk everything. To trust me with the parts of yourself you've protected your whole life. And I can't promise I'll be perfect, Tallulah. I can't promise I'll never hurt you or disappoint you or fail you. But I can promise I'll never leave. I can promise I'll fight for you every single day. And I can promise that the part of you that's never been touched, the part that believes you're worthy of love, that's the part I need to reach. Because that's where you really live. That's where the woman I'm falling in love with is hiding. Falling in love with. The words detonated in her chest like dynamite. Say that again, she whispered. I'm falling in love with you. His forehead touched hers, and his breath ghosted across her lips. Probably been falling since your first letter, if I'm honest. But tonight, right now, I need to reach that deep part of you. The part that's never been touched by real love, real choice, real partnership. Will you let me? Will you trust me enough to stay present while I show you what you've always deserved? The tears came harder now, great racking sobs that shook her whole body. And Wyatt gathered her close, rolling them onto their sides, holding her while she broke apart. That's it, he murmured into her hair. Let it out. Let it all out. I've got you. I'm not going anywhere. She came back to herself slowly. The storm had quieted to steady rain against the roof. The lamp still burned. Wyatt's arms were still around her, steady and sure, and his hands stroked slow circles on her back like he had all the time in the world. Tallulah pulled back enough to see his face. His eyes were wet, but his expression was patient. Waiting. Always waiting for her to be ready. I want to try again, she said. Her voice came out rough from crying but steady. Sure. But I need you to talk to me. Keep me here. Don't let me disappear. Relief and love and heat flashed across his face. I can do that. And before we continue with what happened next in that cabin, because what happened changed everything, I want to know where you're watching from right now. Are you in Texas, Montana? Maybe somewhere far from these prairie lands, but feeling this story in your bones. Drop your location and the time in the comments. And if you haven't already, hit that notification bell. Because stories like this, stories about real love, deep healing, and the courage it takes to let someone reach the parts of you that have never been touched, these stories need to be told. And you need to hear how this ends. So turn on those notifications and let's finish this together. Wyatt moved over her again, but this time when panic flickered, he was already talking. Look at me, Tallulah. Keep your eyes on mine. That's it. You're safe. You're here with me in our home, in our bed, and I love you. Do you hear me? I love you. His hands framed her face, and his thumbs wiped away tears. I love how strong you are. I love how you hum those Cheyenne songs when you think nobody's listening. I love that you talk to horses and make yellow curtains and watch sunrises like they're miracles. I love that you're big and powerful and you could probably throw me across this room if you wanted to. I love everything about you. Each word anchored her, kept her present, kept her from floating away to that safe, distant place she'd lived in for so long. Stay with me, he murmured as he moved. Feel this. Feel us. You're not alone anymore, sweetheart. You're not just surviving. You're living. You're loved. You're mine and I'm yours. And nothing is going to change that. And she did stay. Stayed present through every sensation, every emotion, every overwhelming moment of connection. It hurt. Not physically, but emotionally. Like thawing frozen limbs hurt. Like blood returning to numb places hurt. The hurt of coming back to life after years of being half dead inside. She gasped and he caught the sound with his mouth. She trembled and he held her steady. She cried and he kissed the tears away. And when she shattered, really, completely shattered into 1,000 pieces, he was there to hold all of them, to gather up every broken bit and show her they could be put back together into something new, something better. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat slicked and breathing hard, and the silence was different. Softer, full instead of empty. Wyatt's hand traced lazy patterns on her arm, and Tallulah felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Peace. Actual peace. You stayed, he said quietly. You didn't leave. You were here the whole time. You wouldn't let me go. Her voice was thick with emotion. Every time I started to drift, you called me back. How did you know? Because I know what it looks like when someone's leaving without moving. His arms tightened around her. My first wife used to do it. Toward the end, she was there, but not there, going through motions. And I swore if I ever got another chance at this, at real partnership, real love, I'd make sure my wife knew she could be completely present, that she was safe enough to feel everything. Tallulah turned in his arms to face him. Had to look down even lying side by side, and for the first time in her life it didn't feel wrong. Didn't feel like a flaw. It just felt like them. I love you, she said, and the words came easier than she'd expected. I'm terrified, and I don't know how to do this, and I'll probably panic again. But I love you, and I want to try. I want to stay present. I want to build a life here with you. His smile could have lit up the whole prairie. That's all I needed to hear. The rain stopped sometime before dawn. Tallulah woke wrapped in Wyatt's arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady and sure beneath her ear. Weak sunlight filtered through the window and painted everything gold. She could hear birds starting their morning songs, the horses nickering in the barn, the world coming back to life after the storm, just like her. "Morning," Wyatt murmured, his voice rough with sleep. His hand found hers, and their fingers laced together, his smaller, hers bigger, and both exactly right. "How do you feel?" She thought about it. Really thought about it. Her body ached in good ways. Her eyes felt swollen from crying. Her heart felt cracked wide open and raw and vulnerable. And underneath all of that, hope. Real, terrifying, beautiful hope. "I feel alive," she said. "For the first time in my whole life, I actually feel alive." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Good, because I plan on spending the rest of my life making sure you stay that way." They rose eventually. Dressed, made breakfast together in the kitchen that now held different memories. And when Tallulah stepped onto the porch to watch the sunrise, her sunrise, on her land, with her husband, she felt Wyatt's arms come around her from behind. She leaned back against him, and for once didn't worry about being too heavy, too big, too much, because he'd reached the part of her that had never been touched. The part that believed she was worthy. And in touching it, in loving it, he'd set her free.